산을바가 다 라파다 샘니가 다리가 찍다 타다 정도기도 또 예와 마시는 좀 치고서 그래서 샘다 다리 라파다 남바 가까이 것은 라파다 지키고 다리 접차.
How do you think, from a Buddhist perspective, we'll be able to adopt or to apply the ancient teachings to the modern context? In my class, we often talk about questions, for example, of the attitude for Buddhism towards man. Okay, so my name is Aviv, and I am teaching in the Department of Religion here at George Washington University and in the Honors Program. I'm teaching a course on happiness, which is one of the topics that you wrote and talk about, and you're going to talk about today, and I'm very grateful and excited about that. I'm teaching another course about theories of justice and ethics, which is another topic that I'm going to ask you a few questions about. And I'm teaching a few courses on Buddhism, mainly Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist ethics. So my questions will mostly be from my interaction with students, and they're going to be academic, and a lot of them will deal with, obviously, Buddhism, but also with some more academic and Western perspective than mine. So part of them are my questions, and part of them are the kind of typical question that I'm getting from my students. And I have the privilege to have a Buddhist master, and I'm very happy to hear your thoughts about it.
대랑 다았더니 기근 침북 더니 다리 냠도 화선전 소자 침문더니 롤라시기다가 라네 나가보숑스 다 지금 넘바가 추가 나나지 스토파시야다 저시야다 배 요래 이나요 대 로스탄더 되나 당상지 다 당상 그 디럽다 담반다 하장이랑 되나다리 여본들스.
So one of my last year I taught a course about Buddhist ethics, and we talked about the moral teachings of Buddhism from the early tradition all the way up to the modern period. And one of the repeated questions that I heard from students is, it seems that Buddhist teachings of morality are not as systematic as we used to in the West, and they're adapted to circumstances. And there is another famous Buddhist studies scholars who claim that, unlike the West, Buddhism doesn't really have Buddhist ethics in the sense of a complete theory that explained what to do and how to solve ethical dilemmas. And I was wondering, what would you say about this kind of approach, and what do you think is unique about Buddhist ethics compared to other forms of ethical theories?
Pena ande ishi chulugi na kande na tangbo go ti chulug none na tare tandana khona ishi chulug phachu ze tanam doze ton ma to ze ti na ya yar tang den gol lug dan chchum kor ze kaka yo mare te na jima ga tari ga tang khba chog mara ton reshu ge chron di te dam thamba go tamba yore teni nga chon nang ba go yo na ya na shirna tari to gip chugum do gewa chugum do ze ge te yore te na tang sang tari ga 다 라마 mambogo는 또 다리 야럽 정도 거는 뭐고 찬전 계주 제제거래 되는가 저 보여 그 추고나 치르드나 추짐 하는 뭐 치고 르직 단주 세계요래 되는 사체 반주다가 사시아 럭슛 타कर 거는 야럽 정도 그 쇼바트 디나나 문 롤르다 샤시르탄 차가 샤요거래 되는 나추고나 나다리 좀메 바 말을 삼고요.
Thank you so much. So I would be curious to gauge your thoughts about how do you think in the modern period, because we're dealing with so many dilemmas and new circumstances that emerge almost every year and every day now, how do you think from a Buddhist perspective we'll be able to adopt or to apply the ancient teachings to the modern context? And when in my class, we often talk about questions, for example, of the attitude of Buddhism towards women, and now it's really a hot debate in America today. The question of gay marriage. So we know that from a Buddhist perspective, very often gay marriage was considered to be part of what is known as the inappropriate sexual misconduct. And the question is, should Buddhism change, or what do you think the Buddhist position should be on the questions like gay marriage, for example?
Tate ngara ta lo mombo ro namba ga chudera lo jong shera te indi chire zena tari tambo go ta pe na phumun ramnyam ga tawan zena chanji chondon de ga ngana ngamu ne sonra so phumun ramnyam se kita domba yang da rim ramnyam do len chojore ina phumun ram mamnyam ba se kita dansa na tari nipa go go ne ram mamnyam ba se yin go re to kare masdan sa ga wanchan ramnyam yin zena ran hoina america ga chenzin na ra chenzin ga 로지가 동안에 이런데 부모가 전전 용건다 하장 다리가 박칠 매반을 송을 되어래. 나 부모를 원차 요노도 다리가 산지 추고 나나때 요 말에서 있었던 간이야. 수축고 나나 관절 단지 차가 나나 요 말에 뜻이래. 근데 니래 다 당선 그 다리가 내서 하장 캡처하고 부부가 간게 부모라 간게 단 딘자진 전에 산지 좀도 되고 노가 나나 딘자 송요래. 다 딘자 송요인데 자물로나 된 가래가 있나 또 다리 베나 아메리칸들이나 다때 다리가 총천 말아 고내는더니 베나다리 뉴욕 다리 다데 고수 다리 전전건 고수다 고란소나 대가 년주다는 디모차가 직격은이나 되가 차트요래. 야 약금 가래기나 다뽀뽀 강크근 든라이나 다 자첨단 가라 예거래. 레다는 존든 되고 담도 दरवाजे क्यों दरवाजे काम न चले देना तने सेमचिंग लेना से क्यों समझ में क्यों बारे पो गंगे पुमोला गंगे तो योरे से दाना तने कसो योरे तने नी सोनो ता चलो ना तंग ओमा निस्तों तारी लो निस्तों गावजिया को संजे को सोंजे तो ताता के ना रिजे जिंदे याना ची दांसा तारी घर योंगा से तो तने तर चाथब को यो मारे इना याना तारी मुछो को लफ्तर शी क्योंदी ताते जी कुरान सु तारी ती जिस न्योक तो मतो जिरे योरे ते इंदी संजी चोंदो de sungwa kan star yana nangdela ngasun kharsa dera njadam jaga ne tsrmon bozu yung goreda njadam jaga ne tsrmon boto choma dana dog kam na sung mechiz yo mareta ngalala dar kunjir ko tsrdon lala ngonjir ko tsrdo yonre ta te na dariga de dangsang wando shina dariga ta boba ganke ti rolling na de inina sanji chondon de ta te dariga ji tanne chon mareze ita jarko jang tuk chapana de te yo mare yang tsrda tanim thombarezena mi rol ta dis montan baga neser pogyore ta te indi tari chuknika ga katsu jemme bagul gugune no so sarwo yore.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, so karma does explain the diversity, but there are some karmic fruits that we are taught by the Buddha that we need to try to divert. So, for example, we can have a karmic tendency to do unwholesome deeds, and it's our duty as Buddhists on the path to try to change our karmic trajectory. So it's always the question of whether the tradition see, for example, as in the case of gay people, whether the tradition sees that as something that the gay people ought to change, or whether it's a diversity that we should welcome in the modern context.
That's right. The Sanji Chondon de Shuna Tariga Li Jimre Zikitape Jimoson Yore. Yina Tari Chek Zikitapuga Pumoga Zikita Sanjiga Tarim do Dravak Kamna Sonyore. Dravak Kamna in the Raptu Chunga Tariga Flapsha Yora. Raptu Chunga Flapsha in the Ta Tari Pena Raptu Chungani in Raptu Chunga Tari Chik the Yantari Jan Po in a Pola Tari Gaji Yores. Tati Gajit Shuna Tari Savi Pambam Jonju to Sutum Chimbuniam Juji Maret. Red Tana Kotari Yanaka Satum, that Chung says the Nyam Jores. 대인이나 다리가 단데 산슈나 산지 정도 되고 또 주바다 거바니는 거 거비쇼스 다리 찌요레스 제타는 요 다또 샤와도 주조지 잔지나 요 샤와데 짜침보 당 가송을 홍주지는 다디 반방 오만 정조지다 디무스 그 싸와 송요 말레스 대인나 디플랍샤다 안드라 감나다리 응소이나 다 당상이나 다 빼나 포포가지도 지 네츠르 서버즈긴 나다 초마가 던자 요건데 때요 말에 로니똥가 지는 거는 초마가 던자 요너레 제이다나 제요레 다또 럼바준다 당상다리 초아가 초다 제요레 고마이나 못소다리 때 상와라 가와지다 셈나 요너레다 예나야 던자 서버세요 말에 때인디 다또 게와가 제요 말에 니바레다나 니바야 하정 침보레제나 당사 제커잔 바거든 다 포포라가 디모이나 쪼꼬도 차바차바요레세요레단 다 디모야 다리 츠룬 다리 송요 말에 양또 페페 야보레세 원데다테 야보야 송요 말에 니바야 니바 총시즈 임바송.
Thank you so much. So, if it's okay to move using this distinction and move and talk a little bit about a topic that I think both you and I care about, and this is the topic of vegetarianism. In the Buddha's days, as a monk, as a begging monk, he prescribed to the monks, as we all know, that monks can eat meat if it's given to them as part of the alms, but as long as they know that the animal was not slaughtered for them. Today, however, a lot of monks do not beg for food, and they have the privilege to be able to choose. And extending it to the general Buddhist population, lay people, of course, have more choices, and they're not beggars. So the question is, taking into account the Buddhist precepts of compassion, and especially in the Mahayana context, the importance of compassion, shouldn't we extend it to all sentient beings, including animals, and expect Buddhists to be vegetarians?
That's 네, 오늘 제거 송지도 빼야보래. 맞총 신나 산지준도 되고 송들라 타바침보다 타바충은이요래. 레다나 타바침보도 다리가 공방 타르트바. 오늘 그 산지가 특업 공마도 타바침보가 연결해. 대인이나 타바충을 감나 되니 다지 샤사야데 동가레나 나요래 되니 통투 독스메니존테 통제다 투바다 독바 다 딘자 메티트네 하다 다 홍제나로 톱송난 다 초크르스세요. 제다나 산지 쫀돈데고 다 공반 타트도 탁친 다른 도랑가샤바다는 도 냥안네데 바 디모요레 다 디나나세 공거치레잖아 구 당보 사추즈기 때양나 다리가 장동인스 니도마인스 데 사로송레 다 때이나 운이 그 추고 난도 다데나 데네 샘칭 그 샤마자기도 타바치 보고 추고 공반 타트 그래.
So one of the questions that is really intriguing for me, and it's really relevant to our days, because just recently President Obama announced here that he's going to direct major funding for research on the brain, and the last few decades are really, we learn more about the human brain than in thousands and thousands of years before that altogether. So it's time of really exciting development, and big part of it is Tibetan Buddhist monks participated and contributed to our understanding with their willingness to participate in experiments, especially on meditation. Philosophically, however, it opens up really interesting question, and this is, as time goes by, we learn more and more that what we used to call the mind, or even before that, the soul, in the West, is growingly confined to brain. So we associate, we still call it the mind as this intentional aspect of our being, that we can feel, we can think, we believe things, but at the same time we know that a lot of it is rooted in the physical nature of the brain. We tended to see body and mind in the past as two separate things, and today we know that they're interrelated. And many philosophers today and scientists will see the mind as either a byproduct of the brain and in many ways equals to the brain, or just as a function of the matter from which our thought arise. So I wanted to ask about this seeming tension between what we call physicalist and the materialist understanding of mind as matter versus the more traditional way of distinguishing between the two, and the Buddhist position that seems to be maintaining this dualism but see it as a more subtle kind of interrelatedness of those two. But my main question is whether we can justify even seeing this as a subtle form of dualism, or whether Buddhism should reevaluate its traditional doctrine in light of what we learn from science and neuroscience especially.
네 parche 디츠 통즈가는 것에 고나다리 옆에 가모래 이나야 ngi tanga ti ngosong churgarne kambu tsutrono tuze kiwa nga sheze kiyor ti nola tela kiwa nga shege yike yor ti no nakshapa mambo yor tani yang ngosong garne tare churku danzan jamso ti kongo dangsang ga chanrga lapa da wangsa zana jaga senjin de lapa wangsa yora ta tare ti insemin 티 거다나더니 산지 정도인데 지르데가 나나 손는 거야. 담주도 손요래. 또 담주 손요래. 땅이 사람도 딘기 잔지나 산을 봐가 다 라파다 샘니가 다리가 치기다 타트적인도 기도 또 예와 마신이 다리 균치워서 그 손으래. 샘다 다리 라파다 남바 카카인 그 손으래. 라파다 zuki pongbo ko tari chapchadre. Retana lapata ko tari semdela ngirdong roki tana semdela tari pano yoki te yore. Yore tana te niga chigi mare. Ta te chigre zana tsanik baga kiwa ngapshi gar namshag mashi kiga taga songre. Tan di namshag jibuzigdo sanje ga tari xunga nana. Pe jimo yore. Te karte ki malangi janzi na dangsang zambulang tana lapa metsaga nina lapa metsaga nina mnyup chipchag yarmar yore sere. Lapa metsaga shia inna shia dari dawaksam garanga tarong da shki harap chachchagna tangsa janakpati mayora shia ga shki harap chachchagna inna ta ina ko mashi idana ta dawaksam garanga dukjinadra tani dari ga ta tangsa lapa ta karte sem nyar chigina lapa metsaga mnyu mambozu dana tani chongchong indigina manga tsurtai kirong lapa metsa tanda mambozu yore 또 인디 셈도 다리 응니 장내가 첸더니 체슈마 다로티 기와 ngap시 장게다나 다 티모 몽즈드나 드니 셈궁오도 산흑바가 다 전자 아바마가 다리 약주 쉬지지 나라나 당 네르크스 나와 산기비 추다나 니모 차가마텐지 잔자나 산흑바 쿠오나가 구치기 있나 다다리 락수 티모 야하즈 요원 말에 데인디 코론주 짐직시야다 파르치야다 응보다 처롤 거는 지치 졸라테너레 인나나 셈가 감데 산집 정도데 그 중고 추때 잔지나 데 오늘 장내가 다리 응에텐 레 라보레 삼가 데 다리 라바다 임마가 톡바다나 데 칼레타니 요원 말에 슈나 다리 라바다나 체라 슈크스음제기는 제라요레는 제라요레다 제라요는 잠스 그냥 떼치기 임빙이 봐요 말에.
Thank you. This is really as you said, it's an invitation for a longer conversation, and we do have limited time, and you're busy today. So I think that it's our time to move to the campus question.
Lansa pe gale gale. Ta poco nachudo. Pena napchuk bagda pe mnyu mamboz ko tane tare te poyor ko tare chude la tsachembo dana rene de la tsachembo zo yore. Yena ngacho poyor ko tare shiom ba chi girgin nan ra ga tane kheba nan ra khorang chu na te jamz de poyor ko chude la tongchin tare ga she ke yo mare. Te na ngi khora chwa ina khong ta napchuk girgin tare nyancha chembore. Te ndi che gu tang chigi 보여 나요니 보여 그 나추데라 스타스탄 가세요. 근데 그런 거는 다는 보여 그 추데라 로종시야 다나 근데 냐는시야 다나 근데 단 대소다리 스타가 가세요. 니 더 좋아하시기.
Okay, so first, I definitely agree, and even in my lifetime, and the part of my time that I spent studying Buddhism, I saw a tremendous growth in the study of Tibetan Buddhism, and even myself, I started to study Buddhism in Thailand, and then went to China and encountered Buddhism in China, and studied Chinese Buddhism, and eventually discover deep passion for Indian and Tibetan Buddhism. I think that generally there's a growing interest in among Westerners in Tibetan Buddhism because it seems to me and to a lot of other Westerners that Tibetan Buddhism is has more fruitful connection with development in Western philosophy, Western religions, and Western science. For example, the conversation about the nature of the mind that we just had seems to be explored more thoroughly in Indian Buddhism and then later was transformed to Tibet. So there's a lot of modernistic elements that seems to correspond to themes and topics that were explored among Tibetan Buddhists throughout the centuries. In the general population, there's a lot of respect to Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan culture. It seems this is kind of like a popular image of Tibetan Buddhism in the West is that it's a tradition that that know how to deal with the stresses of modern life. It's a tradition that can find a joy in life, and when a lot of Westerners have encounter with Buddhists and with Tibetans, either superficially or more deeply, they are really at awe with the simplicity, kindness, compassion, and happiness that they found among the Tibetans that they come in contact with. There's an influx of Tibetan teachers like yourself who was still coming to the West, and they made a deep impression on a lot of people. It seemed to me also that part of what happened now with the study of Tibetan culture and Tibetan Buddhism in the West is that we're moving into a more mature phase. So the earlier decades of interaction were some sort of like a fascination, an idealized vision of what Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan culture is all about. And I think that we got a skewed picture and more of like really an idealized picture of how we would like to see Tibetan Buddhism, more than how Buddhism was really on the ground. And as time goes by, we have a more, and these are the kind of debates that we have in the tradition and the kind of trends that I see. We have a moving towards a more nuance and a more on-the-ground appreciation of Buddhism in Tibet and the way that Buddhism is developed. And part of it is a very intensive effort to translate as many texts as possible. A lot of ethnographical works of people who are going to Tibetan communities and study how either cultural aspects or Buddhist aspects are practiced on the ground.
나수 그렇지. 그 딸이 당은 좀나 배그 나왔던 거 다 그렇다봐도 운행이 당해요. 치레되나 나 너쇼건데 셈 너소 여보 신부 잘 기억금에다 이나 야일소이나 다 당보지 억설다 얌성거는 송아 이나 지만 오늘 판바토에 저런데 그런 소대 셈 이런 초과에 다는더니 버치고 판바다는 그건 셈나라 되게 자친구도 좀 덮고요. 또 이나 직송지도 오늘 점선단단 바스레서 근데 다 때는 게 저와다 지르지나 다 때는 송 시조근 차트되나 드니 조 다 디스트들 걸 배 보여고 대치다 그거 tene kacha ina nga shu zo re ina yang tari tak che gu ti khashang de tenja z gu chi ge jimse je gu chi ge jimsan kare na seren kono tsata si.
Well, so there's a universal answer, and I think that in a way we all look for the code to happiness. So that's something that I think that originally I'm from Israel. If we were in Israel, I would still find this topic very relevant. Or if we were in China, or if we were in any other place in the world, I think that as humans we all want to be happy. And going back to our previous discussion of vegetarianism, I think that it's true for other sentient beings as well. Yet I think that there is a growing concern and a growing interest in the question of what really makes us happy, because for a long time people grew up with this ethos that the more we will progress, the more we're going to be develop our technology to help us to deal with what we thought causes suffering, the more happy we will become. And in the recent decades, we see an unprecedented development of technology, yet sometimes people ask themselves whether the progress that we thought will bring us happiness really bring us happiness, or whether it added more to our suffering. And this is a question that traditionally in the West became a genuine concern ever since the Enlightenment, the Enlightenment period. So I think it's in the background in the culture ever since, and you probably know that one of the major principles in the American Constitution is the right to pursue happiness. So it's really part of the cultural DNA of this culture and this country. But I feel and I think that it becomes much more important recently, and I see more people writing about it, more people asking about happiness, and there is a demand for a more nuanced answer that will help people to deal with the challenges of the specific challenges of this time and culture.
그런 게는 그런 다른 드라마 뭐 요상가 나라에나 드라마 뭐 요래 레타가 좀 뽑아라 스템저 요래서 스템저 요네나 지마다나 드네 나랑서 드네 몸타네 네 가야셔만 오늘 전에 그 드네 직 넘바가 다스타와 저거난다가 넘바가 까차데 네 할레 직 세마다리가 줘보소 드네 가야나 지 조라인난다가 드라인난다가 로종난다가 또 총총디가 베트 semgaboyin tane maoner kamna tenraga tarongani harasara yirungu bara ta shirnaya nilik zikidan sorki to chik tion thongdong zigdan chizo chikin sam pe khale kaboyin reta yana mam thane dariga onsong dariga jera shiki zina ngetena dariga tane necher mambo zigdan ngalayang dariga tane dariga shito yongore tane ngarang chu dari chik pegyu ke chulgna dimon soina tane dari thankin katseb jubgona ngarang chu nibaka.
Thank you so much, and it was, I hope that, as you said, it's just the first meeting and first opportunity, and going over the long, very long and the distinct list of books that you published in China. I felt at awe, and I know that you have much more to say about all of those issues, because I saw that you wrote about them, and I hope that I'm going to have more opportunities to have conversation and read the books that you wrote. And thank you so much for having the opportunity to have a conversation. I feel privileged.